Hello, everyone. I'm thrilled to have Britt Provost with me today, a dear friend for a long time from my Seattle network. She's been a chief people officer in many companies, and I'll let her give you a current glimpse of what she's up to. So over to you, Britt. Introduce
Hey,
yourself, please.
Bobby,
Hey.
it's so great to be with you today. I know we've been planning to do something forever. Yes, I have been a chief people officer for probably the last 12 years, but I'm in transition right now. So I'm actually working with the University of Washington at Bothell, and I'm teaching coursework in leadership and management, which has been a passion of mine for a long time. And I'm figuring out the rest. So I'll keep you posted.
Fantastic. Thank you. And just to insert for the audience from our pre-count chat, we both are passionate about how to really meet Gen Z where they are and how to integrate them in and be sort of reverse mentors as the generation that can really learn from them and as well as teach them. So feel free to insert that along the way as we talk about respect. So let's kick it off. How do you define respect in the workplace, Britt?
Yeah, and I think it's respect in life too, Bobby. Like I was thinking a lot about it. And I think there's like three foundational competencies for me that are tied around respect. I think respect is a skill set. So I don't think it's just a thing. I think it's actually something you have to work on. And I also think you have to ever earn your respect, as in it's not static, it's something that you have to continue to work on. And the three areas that I think are really, really important that are the components of respect for me are authenticity, curiosity, and the willingness to engage. And just really quickly on the willingness to engage, for me, that's about willingness to have conversations of all kinds. And I think we've lost the art of conversation in the workplace in so many different ways. We're scared to have some of those conversations. And so I think that ability to have conversations is so much part of that building of respect and that showing of respect.
100%. And that's the essence of why I got so excited about building the framework. It's literally a step-by-step process for having those difficult conversations, right? And
Right.
yep, absolutely that. So how do you know when these three things and other aspects of respect show up in the workplace? What is a culture that has those competencies, skills?
Well, I think people are willing to have, make the time and make the space for conversations. I think we see it in terms of kind of that kind of integration between trust and respect. I always talk about this idea that you have to build a track record of trust with people. And so, to a certain extent, you're establishing the fact that you've got integrity and you've also got good intention. And with those two pieces, then you can unravel the things that are harder, conflict, working through difficult conversations, etc. And so you really have resilient relationships if those things are present.
I love it. Integrity and intention. Let's spend a little moment there on those because they're really big, I think, in leadership. I find, integrity is very personal. Like your integrity is going to be very different than mine. And so that right there is a conversation to seek to understand each other and understand what that means for us and what are deal breakers and, how do you hold that for yourself? And then the intent one is I always say to C-suite leaders in particular, hey, your intent's good, but
Right,
are you really aware of the intent? And are
right.
you measuring it? Are you checking it? Or are you just taking a few sound bites from people that you connect with? And that's why measurement's really important, right? To really see like you've tried something, you've communicated something, you've tried a strategy. What's the feedback from different key stakeholders?
Right. Well, and I'd add on to that that sometimes I can see and have seen low integrity behaviors that happen in organizations. And sometimes they're super small. But I think, unfortunately, with those kinds of things, they compound. And so they get into they block the ability to have trust and respect in those relationships. And again, super small stuff, but it adds up. And then when it's gone, it's gone. And so your ability to rebuild trust and respect from that point, wow, that's a challenge.
Yeah, great segue. You intrigued me earlier about respect and trust. So let's break that down. I want to hear from you how you see how do you define each of them. You've defined respect, but how do you define trust? And what's the interplay and how are they different?
Yeah, well, I think again, I think about both of them sort of have a track record. I think respect is on you. Your responsibility is to establish respect, keep respect, maintain respect. I've always talked organizationally about how I don't need you to like me, but I want to earn your respect for what I'm doing based on how I show up. I kind of think trust is the same way. I mean, they're both kind of track records of how you integrate with somebody. But I think trust is a little bit different in terms of I think there's a consistency of actions that happens with trust. Same thing with respect, candidly. I think both of them have the consistency of action, but I think respect also ties into that building of a relationship, that building of a dialogue. I don't think you can have one without the other, to be quite honest. I mean, you can't trust somebody and not respect them. So it's really hard to unravel them in some ways because I think they both are sort of just there.
No, I love it. And you're helping me evolve my thinking. To me, what's just coming up is I think respect is how you make me feel. And
Yes,
so my responsibility and how do I want you to feel if I'm interacting with others? And so that sort of guiding principle around, we hear often like lead with good intent takes effort to do that, especially in heated and challenging, when there are differences, et cetera. And then to me, trust is more in the place of tangible business. It's like, we've got to get certain things done. Do I trust to delegate it to someone? Do I trust that they'll get it done all the way? The classic thing of how managers don't delegate because they don't think others can do it well as
right.
them, et cetera. So I think that's, to me, a bit of the distinction. And it also struck me because I think I've shared with you before, I'm a big fan of Patrick Lencioni's 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, right? That starts with trust. But even as a consultant, as I use that with my clients, I realize, wait a minute, it's missing something. And it's this factor of respect, which is
I think so. I
foundational.
think they're both integrated in. And if you think about the Lencioni work, which is so powerful, right? You can't do anything else until you have trust. And you really can't do anything after that until you have the ability to have that conflict. So it kind of comes back to that idea of I trust your integrity, I trust your intention, and I'm willing to work with you because we have established trust and respect.
So let's shift gears, Britt, to when there isn't respect in the workplace. And a data point that I always point out is MIT Sloan has pointed out that the cost of toxic culture is as much as $50 billion just in the US. And for most of us that work globally, you can just imagine how that becomes much larger.
Right, right. Well, and I think we also see it in the Gallup studies that have just come out that talk about people's engagement and their willingness to give more to the organizations they're working in. Our people leaders are at an all-time low worldwide in terms of that recent study last year in 2024. And additionally, they do a lot of focus on how people are thriving in the workplace. So I think that you can tie that in some ways to a couple things that I think come out in organizations that really negatively impact culture. One of them, like I talked about, is low integrity behavior. And that idea of just some of the small things, not keeping your word, the small lies, sort of avoidance of hard conversations. We'll talk about avoidance in a little bit more in just a second. But this idea of those things really having a cost on the ability to have a psychologically safe workplace, I think is something that we're dealing with right now. People don't know quite what to do. And I think the last thing, and I think it's something you and I are super passionate about, we don't treat people leadership as a craft. We treat it as an add-on, as an expectation, as a whatever. And we don't really train people about the work. We don't teach them how to take feedback, not to just give it. And I think that idea of the people that people are working for in the organizations don't have all the tools they need. I think that's manifesting in everything we're seeing.
Absolutely. Yeah, so let's go there. I think you're opening up the conversation around, I'll paraphrase it as passive aggressiveness, right? When people don't go to have those difficult conversations, I think
I'd
that's,
even go as far as to call it avoidance, Bobby.
oh, yes, 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 absolutely. That's even worse. And I think even more prevalent. I don't have data on that, but I think the just not going to go there,
Hmm.
especially with the divided country and world we're in right now. I think there's a lot of that.
Yeah.
And that's why I believe the framework really helps people to really step by step listen to each other. We all believe in the competency of active listening, but I don't see it really being practiced at all the way down to level 4, which is the deeper true intention of true active listening. But yeah, tell me more about how this avoidance shows up. And
Yeah, avoidance shows up in a lot of different ways. I mean, I think it's impacting people's ability to maintain respect. I think you always hear about, that was a surprise when I got feedback because we are not willing in the moment to necessarily have conversations with people. We wait until the moment that we're supposed to give it officially, the feedback. So I think that's one way avoidance manifests. I think the whole thing of ghosting, particularly ghosting for recruiters, not talking to candidates about how they're going through their process and where they are or giving them reasonable feedback. While that's not necessarily internal to the organization, it impacts the organization's reputation because people aren't connecting the dots and closing conversations. So I think it's manifesting across all kinds of different ways in our businesses. And unfortunately, it's putting us in a place where people lack trust and lack feeling safe, not just being respected, but feeling safe.
Brilliant. Yes. And as you're speaking about that recruiter dynamic, and especially we're back in a very employer centric, the power is sitting with employers rather than employees, I think, in the current economic environment, um, in the current economic environment. Um, what would you say to that in terms of, I think that has ramifications, especially with our newer generations, Gen Z and early career stage folks,
Yeah.
because they're seeking transparency and they're seeking, truly connection and belonging, right?
Absolutely. They want to be, we can argue about whether or not we should have conversations about return to office and all the things related to hybrid work. But we are seeing with Gen Z that they do want to have space and time with people in person. Think some of that is, left over from the COVID experience for a lot of that group. But also, I think just in general, we're lacking connection. And so because we have, we see some of these low integrity behaviors, because we're sort of avoiding some of the hard conversations, because we aren't really actively being curious about that other person's opinion or their perspective or their life experience. I think we're just getting challenged and stuck up in all kinds of different ways that are eroding the way people feel about their experience within an organization. And again, everything we see with Gallup and other things is pointing that out. People are just sort of, what is it they're calling it? They're job hugging right now to kind of hang on and hold on to figure out what to do. But that isn't necessarily thriving within a workplace.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. I think it's a pivotal moment when organizations that continue to invest in respecting their people with
Yes.
all of the things we're talking about, how that's going to pay off in the long run, because it's really critical to stay the course and to continue to invest.
Right. And I'd add one more thing to enabling their people leaders to be successful, not only with training, but also giving people time and space. We ask a lot of those people leaders to do a full-time job and then on top of it to manage people. And that's just not rational or realistic.
Absolutely. I think decision-making authority and power to really delegate that down is really the essence of it, right? Because they feel so disempowered. I
Right.
agree with you. It's not, the training doesn't help unless you can really empower them to
Right.
make
Or
decisions.
unless they have time and space to actually practice and use it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because I think that's another byproduct of AI is we've always, I think, especially in the tech space, worked such long hours and at such a fast speed. And now the expectations are, skyrocketing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, but I'm still hopeful, Bobby, because I think like at the end of the day, like the work you're doing with respect, the fact that we're having these conversations, the fact that there's so much focus on making sure that people feel safe in the workplace, and so much, just focus on that in terms of research, and just, conversations we're having about authenticity, curiosity. These are not new. I think a lot of organizations are starting to try to address it. It's hard work. And I think that's the reason that this is so important is, you can't just dial it in. You actually have to work for it.
Absolutely, Britt. Yeah, I think one of my downfalls and strengths is I'm all about tackling the hard stuff and an optimist that it pays off. Well, let's wrap up with your top tips, my friend, on
Yeah.
how people can cultivate more respect in the workplace.
Well, I'm going to be really simple and I'm going to say, think about when you can have those conversations, how you show up in those conversations as your authentic you, how you can ask yourself, how do I get curious about what's going on here? And not actively avoiding things. I just think that great organizations are built one conversation at a time. Great teams are built one conversation at a time. And if we break it down that way, I think it's more manageable in terms of kind of how we move forward.
I love it. And, I think the simplicity and the power of curiosity for those that feel that discomfort in going to those tough conversations, that's a very safe, I hope people find,
I hope it's a,
entry point,
yeah,
right? It's like, I'm just
be
curious.
curious about it, right? Not,
I'm just curious.
yeah, no judgment.
Yeah,
Explore it, see what happens. The worst thing that can happen is that you end the conversation and have to do another one.
exactly. Well, Britt, thank you so much. I know that I'm going to have you back and we'll take another scoop maybe next year, but it's
Great.
been a delight.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.